Hello, Adam.
Hi, Marcel.
Uh,
How are you?
I'm fine. Uh, Today we will talk about some questions related to Life Tech Access project. And the first question is about if we as client are included in the planning process of the speak-to-text.
Yeah.
And when we have different events, we have events what we can call a conference or a congress where 300 or more participants participate. But we have also what you can call a work meeting with 30 um, participants. Do you like to start with the big conference?
Yeah, that would be fine to talk about a big conference. I'm curious how you do. How are you involved when there is a big conference and this is a physical meeting in a room?
Yeah, that is in different way. Sometimes the organization contacted me or contacted my organization, the European Federation of Hard of Human People, or when the event is in the Netherlands, the Dutch Association. Sometimes they ask me to bring them in contact with speak-to-text interpreters. Sometimes they, and that is happened in the most of the time, they contacted me or us not in the planning process of the big event, but they do that by themselves. They know that deaf and hard of hearing people participate, so that they organize by themselves the sign language interpreters or the speak-to-text interpreters, and then in the registration form you can click or write what you need related speak-to-text. Some is there a possibility to ask for an other language. For example, when the conference is in English, that I ask for the Dutch translation. But most of the time, that is not a question in the registration process, so that you need to write it by comment or ask that separate to the organization.
So when there is a big event, seminar or something, you can actually, during registration, you can tick that you need speech to text.
Yes, sometimes it not happened, but different time it should not happen, and then you need to knock on the door and ask for this kind of service.
When it is already possible during registration to tick the box, who will then pay for the service?
In general, the host of the conference or the organization of the conference.
Okay, that is a very big difference from how it is for me, because here they are very, they look very much into who will need this service, and then it must be billed to my name because I am the user. But it makes it also difficult to be part of the planning.
Yeah, but you have here a good topic, but maybe it's nice to make it concrete. I participate different time in conference of the European Disability Forum, and that are sometimes conference of 200 or 300 people, and then they organize the speech-to-text interpreters and the sign language interpreters, and that are paid by EDF, the European Disability Forum, by themselves. When it is an event in the Netherlands, and I am the only hard of hearing participant, then can it be happened that the organization asks to me, oh, but if it will be fine when you bring your own speech-to-text interpreter with you. And then I have the possibility to pay it for my personal hours or for my work hours. It's a little bit related with the conference work related, or is it more a personal or volunteer work conference? But when it is work related and I am the only hard of hearing person, the most of the time I need to organize the speech-to-text interpreter by myself. But then the positive element about that is that when I organize it by myself, I can look for a quality working for a good speech-to-text interpreter that working very well, or a speech-to-text interpreter that I know, and the speech-to-interpreter know me, so that he or she know what I need. And then it is also for me easier to inform the speech-to-text interpreter about the agenda, about the papers of the meeting, so that the speech-to-text interpreter can prepare the work before the event.
So your speech-to-text interpreters also prepare themselves before an event where they would be working?
Oh yes, yes.
Good.
That it happened when we use speech-to-text interpreters in the Netherlands, but it also happened by speech-to-text interpreters for EDF meetings. And also when I give it not to the speech-to-text interpreter, the most of the Dutch speech-to-text interpreters will send to me an email. Hello, Marcel, do you have for me the agenda, or do you have the papers, or do you have the list of the names of the people that participate, so that they can put a lot of information in the computer, so that it make it more easier for them to do the job, but that bring also the work in a higher quality.
That is really nice to hear. Very nice. Good. It sounds really great.
Yeah, and do you have some experience how you can talk with a speech-to-text interpreter about the technical issues? Can you example talking about the color of the speech-to-text, or?
No, that is not an option for me, and I'm Danish. What I can choose is, would I like to have the speech-to-text on a big screen if this is a conference, and I could have the speech-to-text on a big screen next to the PowerPoint presentation, or do I prefer to have a tablet and have the speech-to-text right in front of me? That is what I can choose. And of course, if I have a tablet, I can do something, but it is very limited what I can do. I can enlarge or diminish the text on that. That is the options that we have here. I cannot I cannot change colors if I need that. Of course, if I meet up soon enough, maybe it's possible that I go to speech-to-text interpreter and ask, could we have it so and so? And of course, they would meet that requirement. But usually we are not really involved in that. So
But
it sounds very nice what you're saying. Very nice.
And when you use the tablet, can you then ask for bigger letters?
Yes, yes. Well, we can say, can we have bigger letters? But you can also, on a tablet, you can do something to the screen yourself. Yes. And when the speech-to-text interpreter is in the meeting or in the conference, of course, you can easily contact them. That is possible.
And do you have the possibility before the meeting or short time before the meeting to test it or to try it?
They usually write test, and you can see that there is a connection. Yes, you can do that. So you see that they're working. It is working for them. You can see that. Yes.
But you have not, example, 15 minutes before the conference start, contact with the speak-to-text interpreter to control if everything is working well.
No, you don't plan that. I usually get there in good time, so that I manage to have it settled. But for Danish speech-to-text interpreters, they also have no time to prepare, so that they're asking for the agenda and so before a meeting. It is rarely used here.
Yeah.
So I see we can improve something.
Maybe you have also the same experience. I have seen that one of the most important thing is the quality of the internet connection. It is very important that when there is in a conference, that the conference center and also the room, the Wi-Fi of the internet connection in the room is strong enough for the speak-to-text, and that is also happened by smaller meetings.
I think actually that our speech-to-text interpreters mainly work via radio, so they're not connected to internet when they do speech-to-text interpretation. But of course, when we go online, they need to be on the internet. That is obvious. But in a conference where we're in a room, they will work primarily via radio, as it is now.
Okay. And do you have some experience with remote speak-to-text at event?
Not at national level, no. But I have had over the last year with Corona and things, we have had online meetings, and that is of course also remotely speech-to-text. And for now, the speech-to-text interpreters will send out the link and be the host of the meeting. So it also means if I chair a meeting, I'm not the host. I don't have all the keys in, for instance, a Zoom platform to control how the meeting goes. I know this is a different topic, but still, these are tools that you use to set a meeting. And when using share screen for the speech-to-text, it just makes it difficult to share a PowerPoint presentation, or if in a meeting you would like to discuss the budget and show the Excel sheet, then we need to change settings, and actually it interrupts the communication that we need to change settings. So what I see at international level, I learn a lot from that and hope that we can also benefit from that in my country.
Yeah, back to working by remote. Before Corona, I use sometimes remote speak to text at my work, but personal I prefer that the speak to text interpreter is live with me in the same room, because I see different time that the internet connection what not enough or strong enough, or that there were not mics in the room, so that it was difficult for the speak-to-text interpreter to hear or to understand what was said. That is happened when you are working with a big group, example by 25 or 30 people, and when the speak-to-text interpreter is not in the room, it is sometimes difficult for the speak-to-text interpreter to understand what is happened in the room. And you can say the speak-to-text interpreter cannot see the non-verbal communication of the other participant in the meeting. So also at work, I prefer that the speak-to-text interpreter is with me. And of course, by smaller meetings, is it more possible to use the speak-to-text interpreter via remote. But now by online meetings, is it different in the Corona period, because we have now a lot of experience with working online, because we have now much more online meetings via Zoom, via Teams, and via Skype, so that we have a lot of new knowledge about working with speak-to-text interpreters online, and that is very fine. And you should also see example when you use the platform Zoom, that working very well if you have an example, a meeting with 5 people, or do you have a webinar with 60 or 75 people, the speak-to-text working very well. There's no different how big the group is. And you have different options to read the text in the screen or under the screen, or you have possibilities with text on tap or text on tap. Do you work sometimes with text on tap?
Yes, I do actually, because I have been introduced to this text on tap. First, it was text on top, and now there's also text on tap since I was elected the Secretary of European Federation Hard of Hearing. So I have learned about these things, and it is amazing to, for instance, go to the EU Commission, and you can just have a tablet, and you can have the language, my native language, Danish. You can have it simultaneously translated into Danish, and that was a huge experience back in 2016, I think it was, to have this done, and that it is possible. If I am to interact in the meeting and ask questions and comment, I think I prefer to have the text in English, because then I'm in that language which they are speaking, and I will also be referring to the same vocabulary, of course. But it is good to know that this possibility is there, because I would also give this advice to others if they think, oh, it's difficult for me when I have to listen to English, and it's a long time since I last spoke English, so maybe I cannot follow. And then it is possible to say, yes, you can ask for your own language. So I think that is a good experience. But I think also my experience is that the speed of the typing, the way the words appear on the screen is faster. So it is closer to what is said. It follows better the spoken word, which is easier for my brain because it doesn't have to split up in what I hear and then what I read to support what is being said from whoever is talking or giving a presentation. So that is a relief to have this closer to each other. So that has been a good experience for me.
What do you prefer? That you when you read the speak to text, that the text is word by word, or that the text is in one line?
But if sometimes I have tried that some sentences are just on the screen. Welcome to this meeting, for instance. That is fabulous. Instead of getting WELCOME one letter by letter, because it takes ages. And when it takes ages, it also means that in other parts, text will be cut out because otherwise the gap will be far too big. So that has been fabulous to have whole sentences and also word by word or parts of sentences, because there's a linguistic work in this that is at a very high professional level, which I really enjoy. So that has been a good experience for me.
What are you experienced with the automatic speak to text?
It is often wrong. It is very confusing, and not long ago I participated in a seminar and for a whole day, and it was very much about cochlear implant, and I don't think it got it right more than 2 times during that day, because when it is in the middle of a sentence and then different syllables are stressed, then it just did something to the cochlear implant. So
do you know of the automatic speak to text is possible in other language than English?
It is. You can buy it, but I haven't tried it out. But it should be possible via the SpeechLogger. You can have an account on it, but I think also with Microsoft 365, I saw at the Microsoft workshop a man giving a PowerPoint presentation, and he was wearing a microphone, and then it was automatically subtitled. But that was in English, but I have seen that later done by a Norwegian man, and then the subtitles came there in Norwegian. I understand Norwegian. So it is possible.
Okay, Ida, do you have more questions for our interview?
Just thinking now, when you are able to book the same person, the same speech to text interpreter, this means that long ago you have settled your needs. This is what you need. So those the speech to text interpreters that you use, they know what you need. So really now it is, you don't need to meet up very early every time to have this settled for you. Is that right? Because I know you.
Yes, that is right. And the speak to text interpreter that I use for my work, he know the organization, he know the people, and related the meeting. We say sometimes that the speak to text interpreter can say when we have the coffee break or when we have another break, so that the speak to text interpreter have time for relax.
Yeah, that is also important. Yeah. I
But
have
that
over
is,
the, sorry.
But that is more the breaks for the speak to text interpreters at a big conference. It little bit difficult. and that need to be in the agreement between the speak-to-text interpreter and the organization that organize the conference.
I think that is important also, that it should be within the organizing team to see to it that the speech-to-text interpreter also has breaks.
Yes, or that the speak-to-text interpreter is not working alone, but with another speak-to-text interpreter, so that they are in duo and they can switch from each other.
But that is the way it's done in Denmark. They always come in pairs.
In the Netherlands, is that not so common? And example at the EDF conference is the most of the time is the only one speak-to-text interpreter.
Yeah.
But also there are also different conferences that there are more speak-to-text interpreters, or there are a team of speak-to-text interpreters. It's also related how big the conference is.
Yes. Yes. Have we been
Because
through
you
it?
have also different conference in time. Is it conference for 2 hours, or is it a conference for 3 days? That make also a big difference.
Oh yes, sure. Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay, I think that we are ready.
Yes, I think also this is it.
LTA Live Text Access, Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona, SDI, Internationale Hochschule, Scuola Superiore per Mediatori Linguistici, ZDF Digital, European Federation of Hard of Hearing People FHO, Velotype, SUBT Access, European Certification and Qualification Association ECQA. Co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Erasmus Plus project 2018-1-DE01-KA203-004218. The information and views set on this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official opinion of the European Union. Neither the European Union institutions and bodies, nor any person acting on their behalf, may be held responsible for the use which may be made of the information contained here.